Hey everybody, once again it's me, Lila, back for another episode. Guess what I found? Alright, so here's where I stuck the prologue. If you have been listening for a while, we'll listen to all the episodes. At some point I mentioned that I know that somewhere along the way I have put the story of like how we actually met somewhere, and I just couldn't remember what I did with it. So a while back I was thinking of starting a podcast that I was going to call The Seventh Mary Murderess, and this would have been the first episode. So I've taken the liberty and removed the end caps that would have been the intro and the outro for a podcast episode out of this already. I think, and I don't know if there's anything in the middle or anything. Oh man, I should turn off the Wi-Fi. Hopefully do not disturb. All right. So all that being said, so there is a journal entry. This is a journal entry then from June 25th of 2019, which is a shout out to one of my best friends in life because June 25th is her birthday. Um, but anyway, so the prologue is here and then a journal entry for June 25th of 2019. After this, we're going to fast forward into August of 2020, and think which is then when I was working for the census. So between August of 2018 and then this June of 2019 is when I was really working on the book and developing my thesis about narcissistic personality disorder. So after this journal, I'm going to then go and finish the anecdotes, and then we can move forward then with moving into 2020. Um, because that like kind of trying to at least keep things in a contemporary order, like relatively speaking, right? I don't want to get too far removed with the journals from the other stuff that I'm saying. There is also a prologue part two that is an anecdote that I haven't done yet that will then be the next episode following up to this. Um, so without further ado, let's get out of edit mode real quick and let's dive into the prologue. We met one night in January of 2013. I only remember that because I had just moved to Oahu from Kauai and was living at IHS, the Institute for Human Services, which is a homeless shelter. And I had just interviewed for a live-in homemade position in Hawaii Kai. I had taken the bus to see some sights in Kailua and was waiting at the last bus stop back to Honolulu at about 7 p.m. I don't want to lose the dramatic effect of this, so I'm going to provide a wide backdrop. Kailua is a relatively small town, but a major tourist attraction for both beautiful Lanikai Beach and Kailua Beach, with its fine golden sand and numerous activities, including venturing to nearby Popoia Island, which is Flat Island. You could rent kayaks or swim to the unique bird sanctuary that is approximately a quarter of a mile offshore. It's like a giant pumice stone. It's so cool. It's literally extremely flat, and when you get there, it's full of holes. Like maybe I'll dig up some of my pictures of it from Facebook because it's a really cool island. It's definitely worth a little bit of a visit, and it's not much of a swim. It's not super dangerous. It is, however, where I got stung by a Portuguese man o' war on my way back. Anyway, but yeah. Anywho, so the little eateries near Kailua Beach are quite popular, especially the Shave Ice Shop that is rumored to be a favorite of President Obama. Kailua is a favorite destination for Japanese tourists who usually take the bus from their hotels in Waikiki. I actually drove a lot of them too when I was driving rideshare and when I was driving taxi. Like it's to the point that it's technically like the neighborhood slash town of Lanikai. There's a lot of like political unrest when it comes to the problem of the over tourism of Lanikai, mostly deriving from the fact that back in the 70s, when people were buying the land or like buying the houses over there, it was touted as like, oh, it's a quiet neighborhood nestled between like the mountains and the ocean. Like it's a really cool place, right? And stuff. But over time, as the popularity has increased, it's gotten to a point now that like tourists will park blocking people's driveways and shit. Like it's really bad. And so they ended up having to kind of enact laws of like being able to just like tow people out, and like people had to like privately put signs in their yard like you can't stand on my grass and stuff. Like it's a bummer. It's also like it's so close. It's literally right next to Kailua Beach Park. It's like a hop, skip, and a jump away. It's not like two very distinct places. But I don't understand why people feel the need to drive all the way into Lanikai just to go to Lanikai Beach. Like, but anyway, I'm just getting on a soapbox about it now. But I never understood it. I think it's just because I have the residual frustration of being a driver and having people want me to drive because it's a gridlocked neighborhood. So imagine the whole neighborhood is like a cul-de-sac. It's one way in and one way out. Um, this truck go by real quick. Um, so when you get to where the road forks for Lanikai, like you go to the right and that's the way in, and then at the end of the road you turn left and to come back around, right? And it's one way. And then in between there's all of the streets then that connect that loop that are alternating one-way streets and stuff. So it's a pain in the ass, and when it's really heavy with the tourist traffic, it's literally like bumper to bumper, can barely get in and out of there, which is another reason then why people who live there were always so pissed off. But when you're a driver who's working to make a living and someone wants you to drop them off somewhere that it's going to take you 30 minutes to get like a half mile out to get out of it, get back on the road to make more money, it's a real bummer, actually. Um, yeah. Anyway, so just putting that out there that like some of this stuff, it's like, bruh, if you're a tourist and you want to see Lanikai Beach, do every fucking body a favor, take the bus and make the walk. Like, if you're that lazy, you don't deserve to go. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, not sorry. If you can't fucking walk 100 yards from one beach to the next, that you think you need to be a burden on residents, like, oh, is that a Supra? It is a Supra. Is that a Supra? I'm sorry. I love that. Every time I see one, that song goes through my head. Um, Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna. That's the universe's sign to tell me to stop on that. But just on that note, that's the high horse of a local resident. Like you're pissing everybody off with that bullshit. Um, yeah. Anyway, so they depart the bus at the shopping center, which is basically an outdoor mall. There's a bus local to Kailua itself. So you bring the bus over from Honolulu, you get off at this bus stop, then you take the local to Kailua bus stop, and then across the street from that bus stop is then where the bus turns around and comes back to bring people back to Honolulu. Um, the shopping center is a widely spread marketplace that, so like it's not a strip mall, right? It's kind of like it's one huge parking lot and parking garage, but then like the stores that are there are more or less like individual, like independent brick and mortar stores, other than the strip that is like it used to be a Pier 1 Imports on the corner, but now I think that's the ABC or the AT&T, and T, and this will come into play later. Um, so yeah, take notes because this is relevant to my escape plan. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop this here. There's an AT&T store and then the Ulta Beauty. There is no Ulta Beauty in Honolulu. There's only Ultas in Kailua, Kapolei, and Pearl City. I'm pretty sure yeah, I think that's the only three. Anyway, but there isn't one in Honolulu, not even at Ala Moana Center. There's only a Mac and a Sephora, and they're across the promenade from each other. Anywho, um, and then, oh, what else is over there? Maybe it's just those two.
So they have like, well, you know what? I'll send a screenshot of the menu so you can come with the thing, but something to make
Yeah.
sure.
So she's making me hungry because I'm biding my time to go back into Whole Foods and buy the family size Greek salad because I've been craving it for like a month and a half and it's always sold out. And they had 3 this morning, and I told myself, don't buy it now. Cross your fingers and come back at noon for lunch when you can get falafel balls and dolmades to go with it. And then I don't know why I say dolmades like it's a Spanish word. Leave me alone. But anyway, anyway, she's all the time like, "I'll send you the video." Like, God damn it, you're making me want my salad. Okay, anyway, back to this. Focus, bitch. All right. So yeah. So anyway, the shopping center is a widely spread marketplace that has a Whole Foods, a Foodland, Long's Drugs, Macy's, Pier 1, which is now an AT&T store and an Ulta, and the like on one side of the main drag, and more local fare like a Lani Kai Juice on the other. So the opposite side is a strip mall. There's a really good Mexican restaurant, Lani Kai Juice, a bookstore, and a Times supermarket. And then around the corner from all of this, on the other side across the street, there is now a Super Target. Like this is a major, like this is the east side of the island's like shopping mecca, basically. Okay, so anywho, that being said, from here, one can catch a locally routed bus that will take you closer to the beach parks. All in all, the sprawl takes up about 4 intersected blocks, right? So, like, if you have your T square, it's all 4 quadrants of the T square, right? It's just one big ass shopping center, okay? The bus stop in question is across the street from the Whole Foods Market. It's an uncovered stop with 2 small stone slabs for seats, but there is a concrete planter box in front of the store. At the time, it was a Napa Auto Parts. I think it's something different now, and I'm actually pretty sure it's not because I have researched that now, and I'm pretty sure it's still a Napa Auto Parts store. But it's a kind of like big old planter box, so it's made out of lava rocks. It's like a foot wide, so it's definitely like you can sit on it like a bench without like sitting in the plants. Oh, there's my friend leaving this building. Oh, hi, Kai. Shout out to Kai. He was the tech support manager when I worked for the census, and then we ran through each other. And he's like, "You look familiar," and I'm like, "You look familiar too." It took us like running into each other like 6 times to finally get to the bottom of it. Anyway, anywho, see, I'm not a bitch. I do like some people I've randomly ran into. Okay. And then ironically, I'm actually doing this sitting on, and there's like a little side park. I think I mentioned this before because I record here on a regular basis too. It's like outside around the corner of the Whole Foods, and it's across the street from a big apartment building. So anyway, that being said, it's just the irony that I'm actually like also on a random park bench near a bus stop at a Whole Foods to record this. It's just auspicious, I guess. Um, anyway, so I don't believe I was the only person waiting for the bus that night. For some reason, I seem to recall sitting on the planter with a few others dotted around. You waiting for the bus? I hear someone ask me. What a stupid fucking question. The funny thing about this is I've had this happen to me numerous times since this. Um, but yeah, that's a whole other like can of worms. Like it's weird. Like you'll be sitting there at like the bus stop, sitting on the bench waiting, and there will be people, and some random person will just walk up and be like, "Are you waiting for the bus?" And I'm just like, "Yeah." I'm gonna offer that as like exhibit sub A of like the conspiracy theory thing. That it's an I feel like it's an odd thing to ask, and it happens so much that it's like I'm literally sitting at a bus stop. What do you think I'm doing? Um, but all the time, people sit down next to me and ask if I'm waiting for the bus. Um, yeah. Anywho, you proceeded to sit down next to me and just talk and talk and talk. I gave off all of the usual not interested signals, lots of uh-huhs and looking around, looking at my phone, anything but trying to engage him in a meaningful way. I was probably sitting there playing Candy Crush or something with headphones in too, and he just sat down and was like, "You waiting for the bus?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then went back to trying to do what I was doing, right? Um, but yeah, anyway. When I had first moved to Hawaii, I was on Hawaii working on a farm. There were two other women there that were farmhands as well. One of them was very close to my age, and we used to hang out and go to the beach when I first got there. She was showing me the ropes, as it were. One of the things she mentioned to me is the fact that hitchhiking is common on Hawaii, and for the most part, since it's not a very densely populated island that is mostly farmers, it's relatively safe. I remember her anecdotal words echoing in my brain that night. You know a pervert when you see one. Just say the next mile marker as you stop and get out. Right. That, like I said, that's the hitchhiking advice. Hitchhike at your own risk, but like you know a pervert when you see one. Like it shouldn't take you long to figure out that the person driving the vehicle is a little off. Just be like, hey, actually, you know what? I think I'm going to go see my friend who lives down this road. Pull over right here. The funny thing about it is, so I used to go to Kilauea Beach. I love Kilauea Beach, and from the farm that we worked on, that was up the road. The mile marker that would probably be if you hitchhiked from Kealia Beach Park, by the time you figured out that someone was a pervert, the mile marker you would ask to get dropped off at would be the road to Mark Zuckerberg's house now. So thanks, Zuck. Because now like we can't fucking say I'm gonna go drop in on my friend because the fuck you know Mark Zuckerberg, okay? Yeah, thanks, dude. Ruining shit, making things unsafe for everyone. Okay? Jesus. Anywho, I kid, but I'm not kidding. Like it's literally like by the time you would get to that spot, that would probably be about the area where you'd be figuring out you need to ditch your ride. Okay, anyway, you followed me onto the bus. I thought you were going somewhere too, but you weren't. You got on the bus to, quote, make sure I got back to town safely. Oh my God. I knew I had a live one on the line. All the way back to Honolulu, you talked my ear off about some lawsuit you were working on against the state tax office. Side note, I've since seen this lawsuit and the responses all the way to the end. You keep a copy of it in your briefcase. Yeah, I looked. I couldn't resist. I had predicted it was as dumb as fuck, and oh boy was I right. Finally, we made it back to Honolulu. I tried to say goodnight, but you followed me off the bus and began to walk with me. Eventually, we stopped in front of the Bank of Hawaii building. You kept talking for a while. You insisted on me letting you massage my feet, which, hell, why not? I've let you bend my ear for the last hour, plus I might as well get something in exchange. Then you gave me your number. You insisted that I call you if I needed anything. I lost it immediately. I don't know why I chose to like take out a lot of the details of this. So yeah, so he sits down next to me at the bus. Are you waiting for the bus? I'm like, yeah, he proceeds to just keep talking and I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, blah blah blah. The bus shows up, everybody gets on the bus, but because this is where the bus actually starts, just like the 5 or 6 of us that by that point at least happen to be at the bus stop are the only people getting on the bus. So there's plenty of room for everybody to spread out in their own seat. So I like sitting in the very back of the bus because the seats are up a little higher and it's just kind of a nicer ride. So anyway, so I go all the way back to the back of the bus and he sits down next to me. Now the thing about though back there is that you it's loud because it's kind of like right on top of the bus's engines and stuff like that. And so now he's sitting next to me for some freaking reason. And he is still just talking and talking and talking. And I'm trying to like kind of get a word in edgewise and participate in the conversation. Like every once in a while, something he would say would be coherent. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, you know, it's like this one time I dot, dot, dot. And he would just be like, yeah, no, 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 no. And he would just go back to like whatever he was saying. And it didn't make any sense. Um, what his beef was with them or whatever, right? And so anyway, so at some point I just got fed up with it. Like at the point that I realized like this guy's just a nut and I should probably just move. So I get up out of my seat and I walk down to another seat on the bus where I there was one that there was a newspaper in, so I stopped and so it's 2 seats, right? And then the aisle and 2 seats on the other side. So I go to take the seat where there's a newspaper in the seat. So I sit in the seat by the window and put the newspaper in the seat next to me. And he just follows me. Like by the time I get situated, I turn around and he's standing there moving the newspaper and sitting down next to me. And he's like, oh, yeah, this is much better. I don't have to shout over the bus. And I'm like, oh, my God. And I'm like, what are you doing? But I look at and they just very pointedly say, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm just making sure that you make it back to town okay. And I'm just like, but why? And he's like, oh, don't worry, it's no big deal. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, it is to me because I don't fucking know you. I don't like you. I'm not enjoying your company. Like, why are you doing this to me? And so I'm thinking, like, well, then hopefully when we make it back, right? Like, okay, we're back into town safely. Like, okay, bye. And then no, he followed me off the bus and then proceeded to follow me to where I was walking to. Um, so luckily, IHS had a 10 p.m. curfew. So by the time, like I said, I was at the bus stop at 7. By the time the bus came and we rolled back and we stopped there and stopped, like at a certain point, I had to just say, like, I have to keep going to where I'm going because I have to be there by 10 o'clock. And then he turned around and went back to the bus. And I was just like, thank God. And I just kind of thought that was over, right? So it was like, whew, okay, that was fucking weird. But there's a part of me that sometimes through this situation, I was just kind of like, why didn't I ever tell him off at some point or just realize that I should stay away from this guy? But there's the part of like when you're vulnerable and you need help, if someone is willing to help you, then you're going to accept their help. And sometimes it's just better, like the lesser of two evils is putting up with a little bit of annoyance and irritation. You know, I mean, it's kind of like even if you hate your job, you still go because you need to pay your rent, right? Like you don't tell your boss to go fuck himself because you're tired of being scheduled 10 days in a row. You call HR and you hope for the best, right? And I feel like that was kind of what this situation with him ended up kind of being like. But then when I look back on like how we met that night, I realized I actually did try from the jump to pseudo tell him off, right? Multiple times over just the course of this bus ride, and it just wasn't working. Um, so yeah, like I said, I feel like I owe it to myself and to whatever audience might ever be listening to this to know that I did actually try to deflect this from the jump, and it just wasn't happening. Fast forward a year or so. Oh, sorry, that was probably really loud. Fast forward a year or so, and life had not been so kind to me. I was living at a homeless shelter in Honolulu, but this time it was no longer IHS. Now I was at Next Step, which offered a much better living conditions. It is co-ed. It also welcomes families and couples. This is a shelter that it doesn't exist anymore because the lease that they had on the warehouse that it was in was always intended to be temporary. I think it was only like either 4 or 6 years. And if you watch Hawaii Five-O, towards the some of the final seasons when the new guy showed up, I think it was his name JR Jr. or whatever. When what's his name? Steve? Dano, whatever. found him and he was living in a shelter, that's literally the Next Step shelter. They filmed it there. So, anywho, just saying, like, if you're interested in like some of this nostalgic lore stuff, you can see it for yourself. It is in a famous television show. All right. Anyway, it was co-ed. It also welcomed families and couples instead of bunk beds crammed into a room together. It has cubicles arranged row upon row with the four classes of residents in different sections. So the family section was at the front, and then the women's section, and then the couples, and then the men at the very back of the building. Um, and then there's a common area for eating as well as a recreational area outside. It was just basically benches so people could go outside and smoke, and I think there was like a little basketball goal or something. There he is. Fuck. So, sorry, lost my earpiece. Okay. So there we were together at this Next Step place. I kind of just bite the bullet because, to be honest, in here, it's nice to see a familiar face. Plus, he massaged my feet and gave me cigarettes, so I was not complaining. At least it kept the other dudes away from me. God, it sounds like a prison, right? It sure felt like it. For sure. Not that I know what prison feels like, but it was very just, I don't know, the sort like where you see on TV kind of a situation where it's just like everybody has their own little cell and then we can all go outside in the rec area to smoke and lift weights and like, oh man, okay. He told me that he has an ex-wife that lives in Kailua and a young son with her. At the time, I think the son would have been 8 years old. I remember thinking that was complete bullshit, but I wasn't going to call him on it. You do you, live and let live, and all that. The problem was that, superficially speaking, he did not seem like the type of man that a woman of childbearing age would have married, much less slept with, when he was 55 years old. It would honestly be easier for me to accept that he's a virgin. But now, at this point in our relationship, I realize that it is complete bullshit. Suffice it to say that behavior-wise, it's better if it's bullshit, because if it's true, it's not a good look. He never went to see this kid. There was no picture of anybody anywhere in the apartment. Like I said, here's Exhibit D of the conspiracy theory. This whole story about having an ex-wife that lives in Kailua and a son that's this, and it's bullshit. It was total bullshit. But what I don't understand is why you would think you would get away with telling somebody these details about yourself and then turning around. There's another point, and I'm pretty sure this story will come up later, but he had said something one year, it was like April, and he made some excuse that he had to go to Kailua to pay part of his son's tuition for school. And it was like, so your 10-year-old son goes to a school in Kailua that in April you have to make tuition payments to? I know I've mentioned before, like, remember when I said something about, like, that when you don't know what you're talking about and you make up lying details and you don't know what details to even make up because you don't know what you're talking about? This is a perfect example of that. So it's like, this man doesn't even understand how kids go to school to even be able to lie about it effectively. Um, so, yeah. He's since told me that that night when we met, he was homeless, sleeping behind the Napa and living on donuts some bakery dude used to give him out of pity. That sounds accurate, but he still professes that he had this ex and child. Every now and then he mentions this alleged son. I think the last time was in April when he said something about having to give his ex money to pay his son's school tuition. He said something about all of his expensive tools being stolen out of the shed in her backyard. Now, why, if she has an actual house and can raise your son alone, would you be paying alimony? Child support, like maybe, but not alimony. For a paralegal pro se litigant, oh, wow, that jumped, oh, that was a huge leap. So allegedly, when we were living at the shelter, allegedly, um, at one point he's like he was unable to pay his program fees and they wanted to kick him out of the shelter or whatever because it wasn't free to live there. It was like $60 a month. And he said that like the reason was because they took too much out of his paychecks from working as a researcher or a paralegal pro se litigant at this law firm for his alimony payments to his ex. And it's like that if you like first of all, it's like you don't work, dude. It's just this is freaking wild, right? But yeah, so it's like if you are this destitute, and then obviously like you're this destitute, I don't even think this is a thing, but I don't know enough about this topic. Do they take enough child support or alimony from somebody that they would actually effectively be left destitute? I feel like that sounds ridiculous. But yeah, so it's like if your ex has a house in Kailua where she's raising your son, not just like on her own, but to the tune that you never go see him, and you allegedly work as a researcher slash paralegal pro se litigant, for this law firm, and you're only making enough money to cover your alimony payments to someone who has a house. Like, none of this makes sense, right? Like I said, I'm like, this isn't necessarily my own wheelhouse, and I don't want to be a hypocrite, but it doesn't sound accurate. It just does not sound like real life. These alleged garnishments allegedly got him in trouble at Next Step, and they suspended him for 10 days, allegedly for not paying his program fees. He allegedly spent this suspension at his ex's house at Kailua. See what I'm alleging here? And in what dimension is school tuition due at the end of the school year? The implausibility of his stories don't make me wonder how stupid he thinks I am to believe them. They make me wonder how stupid he is to come up with them in the first place and then have the stones to actually tell people. Right? It's like at some point, it's like he can't possibly be thinking that I'm stupid enough to believe this. He has to just not be quite with it enough on his own to understand that this bullshit isn't believable or whatever was going on. He was confident enough in his role in it that he wasn't embarrassed to say this stuff to someone who wouldn't have believed him, but also had no idea what was going on. Like, he just made himself look like a crazy son of a bitch. Right? So it's like, if I was going to make up stories about myself, I don't think it would be being a deadbeat dad who pays so much alimony he's destitute. I think I would do myself a little bit better than that. But whatever. I've since seen the paperwork from his 10-day suspension. It was for missing 2 meetings with his caseworker. So you had to meet with your caseworker every 2 weeks, but if you missed both in 1 month, they would put you out of the shelter for 10 days. As bizarre as he is, I still came to rely on him for things, not necessarily in an exploitative way, but in a survival way. When my 2 years at Next Step were up and I still had not found employment satisfactory enough to afford living on my own, I called him up and asked if he had room to store some of the things that I didn't want to get rid of. I was receiving unemployment at the time and I had the money to rent a storage facility, but I didn't want to do that if I could just take up a little space in his apartment instead. There's details of like then when I after he moved out of the shelter and I was still living there, but I'm gonna just skip over it because I just don't want to talk about it. Truth be told, for a studio, the apartment is rather large and the closet space is enormous. The corner adjacent to the doorway is actually large enough to be a tiny bedroom. I only wanted to store my nice clothes and 2 tubs of items such as my bicycle repair kit, blankets, dress shoes, journals, and such. The game plan was to find an overnight job and spend my days at the YWCA where I had a membership. They had already agreed that I could sleep in the shade by the pool and no one would bother me. I would hardly be the first or last person to do so. And I just really, it's not really a long story. So when I was staying at the shelter at one point, it was getting a little, it'll grate on your soul a little bit. And the shelter manager actually directly suggested to me that I reach out to him and see if I could just spend, because you could spend 2 nights out a week, but you had to spend 5 days in consecutively, and then you could spend 2 nights out. And I hadn't stayed out of the shelter in like 6 or 7, like in a long time. And so he was like, why don't you just call up this dude and see if you could just like sleep on his couch for a couple nights? And so I did. And it was very restful and rejuvenating, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I look back on it now and I'm like, how many of these assholes were in on this shit? Because to me, I don't know how or why necessarily the manager would have known that I even had any kind of a friendly relationship with this guy, um, without paying undue attention to me in the shelter, right? It's like one of the, but it's like, dude, people are just not minding their own business, or for some reason they think that minding me is their business. And you know what's funny? I feel like that's an interesting tagline for some of this, right? It's like, to me, it feels like people don't know how to mind their own business, but maybe to them, that minding me was their business, right? In the conspiracy theory realm, that's what was going on. These people were put to task to quote unquote keep an eye on me and keep pushing me around through into whatever the fuck it is that they were led to believe I was supposed to be pushed to. And I don't appreciate it, and I never will. Um, I don't think that there is any excuse for manipulating the ever living fuck out of somebody to the tune of ruining their life to a point of homelessness and being trafficked that can have any kind of a reasonable excuse. That's just all there is to it. Like whatever ends these memes were supposed to be justifiable to, they're just not. Like fuck you. Fuck you, fuck your mama, fuck your kids, go fuck yourself, take a rusty machete and fuck yourself with it. It's unforgivable as far as I'm concerned. It'll be interesting to see if I'm right, and I'll, oh, the truth will come out eventually, and all that. Like we'll see where this goes. But I can tell you right now, I am definitely of the stern opinion that I am not ever going to forgive anybody for participating in this. There's no excuse for this, none whatsoever. It's absurd. But anyway, for some reason, he would call me every night around 5 p.m. asking when I was coming back. It didn't matter what I said or how many times I explained what I was doing. He just wouldn't quit. So he was like, yeah, you can keep your stuff here. So I moved my stuff into his place and then was trying every day. I would leave and be like, all right, I'll see you when I see you. And every night at 5 p.m. And if I didn't open my phone, he'd call me at 5:02, 5:05, 5:07, 5:15, and he would leave a voicemail every time, getting more and more worked up until like I would finally call him back around 5:30 and he'd be like, when are you coming back? And I'm just like, I'm not coming back. Like, what part of this do you not understand? And he's like, no, but like, what if it rains? Or like, it's okay, you should come back. I'm making, and it's funny because he would always say like, I'm making corned beef for dinner, or like, I'm making corn chowder for dinner. Like, he would try to entice me to come back with telling me what he was cooking and stuff. And it's like, faced with staying up all night outside or going back to somebody's place to have a hot meal and somewhere to sleep, what would you choose? I didn't appreciate being treated like a fucking animal someone was trying to domesticate, though. It didn't matter what I said or how many times I explained what I was doing, he just wouldn't quit. I would come back for dinner, sleep over, then get up the next day and take off. At first, he insisted that I try to get back into IHS. That failed as they were full. The offer turned into me moving in there because an alleged stroke left him with a barely functioning right arm and dietary restrictions. He said that he could use the help, even though I knew that this was a stretch in order to cover me living there. It wasn't so far off track once I saw the amount of sodium he could take down in one meal. This guy put so much salt on stuff. Like we were in high school, like he'd always want me to like eat his leftovers. So like one day I'd made like a big breakfast with hash browns, like the loose kind, right? Shredded potato hash browns, pancakes, bacon, eggs, right, whatever. And he didn't want to finish his hash browns. And I love the potatoes. So that's when I'm like, hell yeah, I'll eat them. Bro had put so much salt on him, one bite literally burned my mouth. Like, do you know how much salt it takes to actually burn? To burn. Okay. Like, oh boy. Yeah. Anyway, living here eventually somehow evolved into allegedly being his significant other. That's what he had told everyone else in the building. I get blindsided by it from time to time when people make cheeky comments. To be perfectly honest, I'm not quite sure what he has told the neighbors about me, and I'm not sure he remembers either. That's perhaps the most disconcerting part of this, as well as what may have led to his progressively reluctant comfort level with my coming and going frequently. He leaves to go to the grocery store. He comes back about 10 minutes later with a pile of mail. Why he doesn't go to the store and then get the mail on the way back, I will never understand. So the mailboxes were right outside the front door of the building, right? So it's like he would be like, I'm going to go to the store. And he'd go down and he'd get the mail and then he'd bring it back up. And then he'd be like, okay, now I'm going to the store. I don't know what he thought he was going to pop upstairs and catch me doing. I really don't. But after a while, it was like, this motherfucker really thinks, like, he's really trying to catch me in some shit. This fucking weirdo. I don't know what the fuck he thinks he's going to catch me doing. It was super strange. In the pile of mail, there is a menu for a new restaurant that is opening nearby, a healthy wok-style restaurant. He mumbles something to the effect of, it's wok, but you don't like that kind of stuff. Well, maybe you do, like, blah, blah, blah. He rambles on a bit. When I finally get the chance, I say that I happen to love that sort of stuff, and he replies, well, now you tell me. Because I would have had any reason prior to now to have randomly mentioned that I like wok-style stir-fry? He does this quite frequently, in fact, always in situations where it makes no sense to have ever told him otherwise, like any fucking sooner. He has an affinity for canned phrases in general and uses them off the cuff without a second thought about how it will come across in conversation. It's like living on the set of a silly 60s sitcom sometimes. The irritating habit that he somehow managed to catch himself on in this particular exchange is the constant assumptions about my preferences and style that are a real relationship, platonic or romantic, deal breaker. How can you have any sort of relationship with a person who treats you like a dress up doll? Remember when I mentioned in the introduction that he tends to force his experiences into a predetermined life narrative rather than growing, learning, adjusting, and evolving like most people? Imagine having that mindset imposed on everything from the food you eat to the clothes you wear to whether you need the window open at night or if you want your tea steeped a little stronger. I don't understand how he sees me as a human being. A captive princess that he buttles for? A dog that he forced into an ugly Christmas sweater? A surrogate for his deceased mother? Or does he believe that he knows me from somewhere else? I'll just cut to the chase. Something about this whole situation seems fishy. Literally fishy. Catfishy. Right? Someone pretending to be me has had to have gotten these people to agree to participating in this. So they believe I know what's going on because I'm the person who asked them for help. And meanwhile, I don't have a clue what the fuck is going on. Not a clue. It's just a bunch of people being weird fucking assholes. Anyway, journal entry, June 25th, 2019. Last night we watched Terminator because I've never seen it before and I found it in Tubi's leaving soon list. Despite repeatedly asserting that this was the good Terminator movie, you don't say, and that it seemed like it was the first one, wow, thanks, and that people were upset because it doesn't finish everything, and that he, get this, thinks that it ends as a setup for a sequel. Who the fuck would have thought? Jesus fucking Christ, he's so smart. It just blows me away. Like, imagine talking to somebody about a movie franchise as big as Terminator, like they've never fucking heard of it before. But then thinking that this person who clearly doesn't have, like, jack shit positive to say about the things you say and do is the person that you've been speaking to on the internet to get you into this position in the first place, right? I mean, it's so strange. Right? That it's like, yes, I don't know a jack, I don't know fuck all about the Terminator franchise, but I'm definitely the person that you talk to all the time online who's convincing you to do things that when you do them, it pisses me off. Right? But yeah, that's totally what the fuck is going on here, people. Come on. Right now, the building is refurbishing the trash chute, so every night, instead of just taking the trash down the hall, he has to take it all the way downstairs to the dumpster. The night before last, he didn't even take it out. The night before that, we were watching a documentary about the war on drugs, and I told him he could pause it while he went downstairs, not in a bossy way, just in a reminder sort of way. Last night, he announced that he was going downstairs to take the trash out, then asked, "Do you want me to pause the movie?" Excuse me? I've gotten to a point where I can get through these situations without batting an eyelash, so I say, sure, go ahead, I don't care. But as soon as I hear the door lock, I have a mini what the fuck party with myself. Why would I want you to do something that only benefits yourself? Now, you may be asking yourself why he would care to pause it when he remembers it so well. I mean, it's the good one, the best one in the series, the one with an ending that left audiences salivating for a sequel. You know that by 20 minutes in, he realized that he'd never seen it either, right? Don't worry, you'll eventually learn how to read this sorry sack of shit as well as I do. It's perhaps worth noting here, in case you're wondering about the cliffhanger situation, he thinks every movie we watch should have a continuation. That's part of what made listening to him mention it at least 3 times at the beginning of the movie so painful. Of course he talks through movies and narrates them, points out what's going on, which is often wrong about, and just generally is an ass who thinks he is the ultimate point of interest in any situation. So when he finally shut the fuck up and gave it 5 minutes of his attention, the next thing out of his mouth was, I don't think I've ever seen this one. Thus, there I was waiting to pause the movie so that he didn't miss anything while he took out the trash. I don't think anything else in any of my writing about narcissistic personality disorder has ever summed it up so succinctly. It's not about arrogance or self-esteem at all at its core. NPD is the result of a fucked way of experiencing reality that I argue lies somewhere between psychopathy and schizophrenia. In my opinion, NPD isn't a personality disorder per se. The personality ends up disordered, but it's actually a neurological perception problem to begin with. But that discussion is what my YouTube channel is for, where I present my hypothesis about what I believe goes on inside the mind of a narcissist. Don't worry, it's just as much fun as this podcast, as I have case in point examples from both my current charge, which will be here, not on video, and an old college roommate that ticked every box of the diagnostic criteria. Um, So yeah, obviously that whole thing has changed a little bit. Like I said, this was originally written to be a podcast episode and not what I'm currently doing, but so here we are. For instance, the problem with asking me if I wanted to pause the movie while he went downstairs seems like arrogance. Do I need to pause it here because I need him to tell me what's going on? It's actually an example of diagnostic criterion A1A identity. This is the alternative model for personality disorders, though I've mentioned this before, that this isn't actually the diagnostic criteria even now, but I personally feel like it should be, but whatever. Excessive reference to others for self-definition and self-esteem regulation. He needs for me to want to pause the movie because I care about his experience. He needs me to validate his desire to pause the movie. Because I have asserted in the past that he should pause the movie, he wants that validation of importance again. Thus, my wanting to pause the movie while he was gone is seen by him as a validation of our friendship, support for the belief that I actually care about his feelings and experiences. When in reality, though, it's like I care about mine because if he misses this much of the movie and comes back, he's going to continually talk over it about things that either have already happened or he won't understand what's going on. Right? The real reason is because I care about my own person, like my own experiences. But the narcissism also keeps him from understanding how fucking irritating and wrong he is. Right? So he has no concept of this is for everybody's fucking benefit, not just because I want you to have the best experience possible. Right? This interpretation of events only makes sense through the eyes of the narcissist. It's taken years to know him well enough to see things through his eyes. The materials in this podcast are my journals from the last year, and I have been here with him for 3.5. I have known him for 6.5 years total. However, I believe, as I stated earlier, that he believes that he has known me for much longer. Right? That night that we met at that bus stop was targeted. He already knew who I was. He thought I was expecting him. And if you go back and listen to the way things played out again through that lens, right? If you were like, hey, okay, there she is. Oh, are you waiting for the bus? Like, the are you waiting for the bus question is just the lead in icebreaker question. Oh, yeah, I'm waiting for the bus, right? I don't know what I'm saying yes to, right? It's some sort of coded language that if I say yes, this person is going to take it as a reason to continue fucking with me. um, this idea that somehow this is everybody working together for some kind of common good and to give me the best possible experience is it is clearly, completely, and utterly false. I hate this shit. Like, whatever it is, I hate it. I despise whoever came up with this. I don't know how I got fucking nominated or sent. I don't know how I ended up with this job. I hate it. I'm not allowed to quit. I don't even know what the fuck is going on. All I'm doing is playing Try Not to Die. And I don't appreciate it. Like I said, I don't fucking care. Um, Whatever this all turns out to be, and like by the time it's finally out, I'm like, thank God. Like, can I please just not ever have to talk to anybody ever again? Like, as it stands right now, like, I live my life as a relatively normal facing person. Like, I smile at my barista and I do what I do, but honestly, on the inside, I fucking hate everybody so much. I hate the entire human race. I can see why so many, like, science fiction writers have all come to this conclusion that, like, AI would just destroy us. Um, I don't know what any of this was ever intended to do or prove or whatever, but I find it impossible to believe that my life experience has been organic. Um, like literally impossible to believe that my life experience has been organic. There's absolutely no way. This shit had to have been orchestrated. The stuff that's happened to me is it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Like a lot of my life feels like a fucking skit. It's like improvised acting, right? When they say that too, like when you're doing improv, like you never say no, like always say yes, um, and things like that. And it's kind of like just go with the flow and the improv and whatever. The college roommate that I mentioned earlier, that's my second case in point example person for the book about narcissistic personality disorder. Um, she's the one that's like, oh yeah, and like in high school, I used to do IDA and something that's just like I kind of, probably like improvised duet acting stuff and blah 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 blah. And I just remember thinking, I'm like, no one, this bitch is so fucking fake, right? No wonder she lives her life like every interaction with people is just an opportunity for an improvised duet in order to manipulate someone to give her what she wants, to tell her either what she wants to hear or do what she's wanting them to do. She was very forthcoming about describing her psychopathy, basically, right? Her fucking delusional bullshit. Um, which, like I said, if it was intended to be rules of the game, life advice to me, why would anybody take that shit? Right? Oh, every time you're interacting with people, you should just be as fake as possible to get whatever it is that you want or need out of the situation. Like, girl, people do not live like that. Right? People do not, as far as I understand, shit, maybe they do. Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong. Fuck, do I need to just be the fakest person on earth? I mean, is that, in fact, what everybody's fucking doing all the time? Is just being a fake asshole? I mean, I find that really hard to believe, right? Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. All I know is like at this point, doing this, reading my journals and commenting on them, and so this is like all I have left. This is my only hope of any kind of survival or getting out of this ditch again. I'm not working for anybody else ever again. I will never work another job. I refuse. Because at this point, I've been burned by everything. Wage theft everywhere, every fucking job over the last 13 years. 11 times now I've had to either take a landlord or an employer to court or for unemployment, or I've had unemployment 3 fucking times in 13 years. I've been homeless off and on for 13 years in varying degrees. I've stayed at like shelters galore, put up with hella mental illness, wrote a book about it, spent 5 years trafficked by this son of a bitch. The job in Hawaii Kai that I had working for that lady, that was fucked too. And it's like, and I'm not like prior to moving to Hawaii in September of 2011, I had never experienced fuckery like I've experienced fuckery since I've been here. I described it like in some of the surveys that I take, and it's like, what kind of work do you do? And I finally said the other day, I'm like, you know what it is? I feel like I'm like a mixture of Jane Goodall and undercover boss. Like I am an anthropological slash sociological worker that gets put or finds themselves in situations to figure out that or how people and things are fucking other people and things over in order to turn them into whatever governmental or law enforcement agency sees fit to fucking deal with it. And then turn right back around just to get fucked again by something else. I mean, and that's basically what it is, right? Is okay, so here, like, oh yeah, okay, I got a job at this place. Oh, turns out they're stealing 40% of everybody's wages. Oh, I moved into this apartment building. Turns out they're a slumlord that was willing to break 12 different laws in order to evict you. Oh, I met this guy that won't leave me alone. Don't worry, you're going to be trafficked by him for 5 years. Like, none of this makes any fucking sense. Every person I meet can't actually be an asshole. You know when they say too, like that whole thing about like, if you think that everybody you encounter is an asshole, you're probably the asshole. Bro, I'm not out here stealing people's wages and charging ridiculous rents and ruining their livelihoods so they get evicted. Or like, I'm not wagging my dick in people's faces in the middle of the night while they're sleeping at a bus stop already. Like, I'm not doing any. I let the screen die again, but that's okay. I think I caught it in time. If I didn't, I didn't because I've just been ranting and raving. Whatever. Or like Ender's Game, where like they use like all these simulated situations in order to train them, but the kids don't know they're in a simulated situation. Or this is the one I saw the other day about like Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick in A Simple Plan, like when she smacked her on the bottom in that one scene, and that like Anna did it, like she improv that, and that Anna's like shriek when she got popped on the oh dad or whatever was actually genuine. And like they do this in Hollywood a lot, especially with actresses in horror movies and stuff, or like they say like the kids on the set of Stranger Things as well, that like they wouldn't tell them what was that actually going to come in the next scene, so they were genuinely like startled by things and stuff like that. That I'm just like, you don't do this to somebody because you want the outcome to be such a fucking surprise. I'm not going to be surprised. Right? I'm not going to be pleasantly surprised by the outcome. I've literally been dying for it. Oh, it's another Supra. That's fun. Um, I'm not going to be pleasantly surprised. I'm going to be sitting here with my hand on my face, looking at you sternly, with my foot tapping. Like, you got some fucking explaining to do. Some serious fucking explaining to do. Um, like whatever the outcome, whatever, and meaning like the outcoming of it, whatever the end game is, whatever how this is actually intended to culminate, like however this is supposed to go, right? You know what I mean? Whatever the big climactic finish is, I've been pissed off waiting for it for years. I'm literally tired of this shit. Whoever, like, I can't wait to go after whoever the fuck put me to this task. Like, I don't. Ugh, I'll keep my mouth shut, but I'm sure you can read where I'm going with this. What I'd want to do, and it's not pursuing legal action. I want to make people walk on eggshells like it's broken fucking glass for the rest of their lives. I want people to feel the way I felt. I want people to wonder what tomorrow's going to bring because the last 10 years couldn't really possibly get any worse. I've almost died at least twice. Like, legitimately, not like, oh man, that was a close call. I was crossing the street and that jackass almost ran me down. Like, I've had sepsis and almost died of sepsis. I've almost drank myself to death. I woke up in the ICU from alcohol poisoning, from trying to just drown out all this bullshit. Like, I'm so over it. So over it. I'm tired, like literally, like sleepy tired. My body aches. I'm too old for this shit, right? My shoes, the soles have fallen off my shoes. They're currently tied to my feet because even though I used the Tester Up app, I played all the games, I made it to a point that I should have been able to cash out like $110 on January 20th. Today is February 5th, and this morning my cash out for $72.90 finally hit my account because they fucked up on the tracking of so much of the stuff that I completed that I then had to rush to actually complete getting said money because their threshold for cashing out is $70. I had to get that money together to be able to cash out because I need to be able to wash my clothes. And at this point now, because all I was able to cash out was $72, I can't afford to buy a new pair of shoes. I have to just buy some super glue to glue the soles back on and pray for the best because it's worked before. Hopefully it'll work again. That's where I'm at in life after all of this other shit. My birthday was January 23rd. My parents emailed me, "Happy birthday, we love you." No, you don't, because you left me over here in Hawaii homeless playing Try Not to Die. Like, y'all do understand that, like, when people are experiencing, like, homelessness and shit, and they have family, and that family doesn't do anything to try to alleviate or mitigate the experience, right? The day, the day that I was like that the eviction order, you know, the writ of possession came down, May 23rd of 2024. Within the same hour of my landlord's lawyer emailing me about where did you leave the keys, my mom emailed me to let me know that this life insurance policy that they got for me when I was a baby, that they weren't going to pay for it anymore. And if I wanted to keep it, I could keep it. And if I wanted to let it go, there was a cash out value that was equivalent. I can't fucking make this shit up. It was equivalent to the amount of money that I owed my landlord that would have kept me housed and afloat. I would have been able to fix my car. I would have been, if she had told me about, and literally, like, when she's like, I need your address so that I can mail you this stuff. And I said, I don't have an address. He just replied with, oh, what? So are you homeless again? Like, they know this shit's going on. My own parents know this is some bullshit. They know what this is. They know. And they're down with it. My own fucking parents. That's how fucked up this is. I'm on like the most heinous version of like the fucking Amazing Race survivor, like that anyone could ever have fucking comprehended in their entire life. And it really feels like my own fucking family is sentenced me to it. I don't know what I ever did to these people. And like I said, at this point, I don't care how good the outcome of this is, I deserve it. Every dime, every ounce of respect. Like I'm not even ashamed to say it. Whatever this turns out to be, that's supposed to be so good, it's worth holding out for. I don't think anyone is qualified to say that to the person they have commandeered and fucked over for over 40 years. They don't get to say that to the person that seemingly was born to be fucked over like this. We'll see if my predictions ever come to pass, but I'm telling you right now, there's no getting over this. There's no forgiveness. There's nothing. Because you don't get to be this confident in what you're doing to somebody and deserve forgiveness. I was thinking of this the other day, right? You either did this because you were stupid, and if you're stupid, you don't apologize for yourself, right? If you're a fucking idiot, you don't you don't seek forgiveness for being who you are. You just have to realize that you're a dumb fuck that people probably aren't going to want to be around. If you're an asshole that was willing to do this to somebody for whatever reason, you need to own that shit. So why are you asking for forgiveness? Why would I forgive you for being such an asshole that you thought this was okay? Right? No matter how you slice it, forgiveness isn't the option. Whoever was a part of doing this and whatever they did it for, they need to be prepared to stand firm in their conviction of fucking me over and deal with whatever consequences end up happening to them as a result of being fucking put on blast. I really think too that whoever did this shit didn't think that people would ever find out or figure it out. They really thought that I would just be like, man, my life sucks and everybody hates me. And then one day it would be like, no, oh my God. I always have in my mind, at the end of the movie Labyrinth, when like she wakes up and then she thinks that everything that's happened has been a dream, but then all of her stuffed animals like come to life and they're like, no, like, should you need us? Like, yay, we're always here. Then they have their little like bounce on the bed party at the very end of the movie and whatever. I really think these assholes think that's what this is. Right? And so before you're just like here's the thing. My mom told me that like when her and my dad were dating, the movie Labyrinth came out because she's told me how like whenever they've shown it on like TV and stuff, that like God. Anyway, that there's that scene in the end, like when she finally faces Jareth, and they kind of have that slow pan like up David Bowie's body. And my mom was like, I remember when your dad took me to see this in the theater, when we were dating, that they really kind of that he had this huge bulge and they kind of hovered on it for a second, right? She tell right? And that when they've shown it on TV, they always cut it off like at that part, like they've edited that out to not whatever. And there's parts of this that when I look back on it now, that it's like this is the shit she's talking like that when she was dating my dad and he showed her the labyrinth or whatever, but that now like I don't know, like I said, like I feel like some of this shit, um, was intended to point me in a direction. Um, but yeah, I because just for what it's worth, one of the main characters in that movie, their name rhymes with my actual last name, my family's name. And it's a Jim Henson, it's a puppet movie, whatever. And when I went to on my second college program at Disney, you're supposed to be allowed to kind of have some say in where you end up working on your second program. And I gave them my top three choices. I didn't get any of my three choices. I was then put at Muppet Vision 3D to work at the Muppet Show. Like that, it's just one of those, like, you can call me crazy if you want, but a lot of this just seems to, the more that I'm living and dealing with this bullshit, the more I see that a lot of things that I experienced in like the first 20 years of my life were actually just a trail of breadcrumbs and seeds planted to blossom slash feed me in the wandering in the desert that was supposed to be my 30s and 40s of my life. Like I said, and I'll say it again until the day I die, I don't appreciate this shit. I never will, and I swear to God, you're gonna rue the day you fuck with me. You're gonna rue the day. That's a guarantee.